Shalom, my name is Brad Artzon, and I am the Dean of the Ziegler School of Rabbinic Studies at the American Jewish University. I'm really happy that the Rabbinical Assembly is facilitating our chance to learn together, colleague to colleague, and to think through some of the liturgy that moves us all, particularly as we launch the new Mahzor and as we celebrate the cycle of the Jewish year and the days of awe. Right now what I'd like to address is the topic of the Al Chet, which may be the prayer most known for Yom Kippur. The beating of the chest, the endless liturgy is a subject of vaudeville shtick and of jokes, and I think goes to the very heart of what the day is about. We begin the penitential season by speaking about slichot, about forgiveness, a paradoxical way of approaching apologizing when you go into the apology demanding, in a sense, expecting that you'll be forgiven for whatever it is for which you apologize. But the Al Chet is a way of formalizing this process of apologizing, and 10 times throughout the cycle, from Kol Nidre at the beginning all the way through Ne'ilah, we perform this Al Chet ritual that we speak about a collection of sins made poetic. And that's really what I want us to get to. You know, the different sins listed have been organized in different ways throughout time and with different lists, so that Rav Sadia's list was briefer than Rambam's list, which is briefer than our contemporary list. It seems that our sins are growing, or our poetry. Those sins and what it means to recite a text of chata'im, of sins, is what I'd like us to think about together. It's a curious idea. I know what it means when I confess the sins that I personally can remember, and thinking through the year and trying to recall what behavior I'm not proud of, what things I did that I shouldn't, and what things I refrained from doing that I ought to have. Those are opportunities both for some remorse and guilt, and more importantly for the resolve to do better and to refashion myself closer to my own truest image and to God's. But here we have different ways of organizing what becomes a literary event. So we speak about these Al Chets, and they are liturgically organized by alphabet. So we do this acrostic in which the sins have nothing to do with my personal reflections or ruminations. They have to do with where they fall in the Aleph Bet. In earlier versions, we see them organized by theme. So some are grouped together as ones, acts of coercion. Some are grouped together as ratzon, voluntary actions. We have acts that are bishgaga, that are erroneous acts, and zadon, those that were premeditated and intended in advance. We have acts that are beseter, that are secret, and acts that are bigalui, that are public. But again, these are sins that some poet put together. These are not our own behaviors, our own reflections, our own lives. And then we repeat that these are al chet shechatanu lefanecha, that these are the sins we have committed before you, God. And one would expect that such a recitation would focus almost exclusively on ritual violations. Those are the moments when we're most keenly aware of being in God's presence. So you would think that religious infractions would have to do with not keeping kosher properly, not observing the Sabbath properly, not checking our garments stringently for shatnez, whatever liturgical commandments that the Torah contains, that we violate those. And yet, those are avoided altogether. Masechet Yoma in the Talmud, page 86b, tells us that we're supposed to focus exclusively in public confession on sins that are bein adam lechavero, between ourselves and our fellow human beings. So what's going on? What does that mean? And what does it mean for a Jew to confess sins out loud, publicly, sins that are between people, and sins that are expressed as poetry? I want to suggest that this is a kind of dance we're doing. More than the private guilt, remorse, and overcoming of sin, this is a public dance we do as a people. And it is a choreography of our own ideal. Surely there's someone in the room who has performed every single sin listed, and we may be attached to more of them than we care to recall. And in reciting this poetic rendition, we link ourselves to everyone who's in the room. There's an enforced empathy in which we imagine ourselves as capable of all of those sins, of being able to have done, if we didn't actually do, every single one of them. And what that means then is that we look around the room not in a spirit of judgmentalism, not in a spirit of smug superiority. We look around that room and we see brothers and sisters like ourselves, fallible, able to commit errors that don't define them as who they are at their core, but are expressions of weakness, guilt, rage, paranoia. This is a liturgy of being human and of standing in solidarity with our fellow Jews, our fellow humanity. The sins that are listed are not unique to Judaism nor unique to Jews. They are things that people commit all the time. And so we remind ourselves that we're not so different. We're really not. And that we stand before God not because God is so far removed and far above, but because God's love is so great that it encompasses us as we are, as we truly are. We speak of God as parent and as sovereign, and parents can attest to the fact that they love their children not despite who they are, but because of who they are, and that includes their shortcomings, their struggles, their foibles. So as we gear up for this, what the school of Rashi called Vidui Rabbah, the great confession. It's the confession in which we take upon ourselves the role of human being. And we stand before God not as our own solitary, autonomous individualism, but as a human being, representing all humanity and reminding ourselves that it is in our shortcomings and in our struggles against those shortcomings, in our capacity to tap into God's vision of us as transcending these shortcomings, lies our capacity to overcome them and to become more than we were before the day began. Shalom.